We're going to get started. By way of introduction, my name is Jeff Dyer. I'm the General Manager for North America for MicroStrategy. Thank you all for being here. Hope you had a great evening with our party and an awesome first couple days here at World 2024. It's a privilege for me to actually introduce the speaker of this track this morning. I've known Bruce for a long time. We were just chatting in the back. 25 years, Guess has been a customer of MicroStrategy. He's been with us for 22 of those 25 years. And always well attended. Always exciting to hear Bruce present at World. One of the great things about Guess is they've been early in really every phase of MicroStrategy throughout the course of time. Early to web, early to mobile, early to clienteling around how they manage the user experience in the stores. Early with Hyper, and right now early with AI. They push us, they challenge us. They're a great innovative partner. Bruce is always willing to try things and give us his feedback and voice and help us innovate and be better as a software provider. So it's an honor for me this morning to introduce Bruce Yen and give him a chance to share with all of you what Guess has been doing with our AI offering here this year, as they're already pushing the envelope once again. He's got a great story. So please help me welcome Bruce Yen.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, good morning. And wow, I am impressed because quite frankly, I don't know if I would have made it to 9 o'clock if I wasn't speaking. So thank you so much for being here. Yes, it's really a privilege and honor to speak at World. It's been a long time since I've spoken at World. So I got some fresh new content. You don't have to see my old slides from 9 years ago, okay? So I've been doing this. Let's see. We got to show this. The lawyers are happy. If you can read it, you're awesome. So maybe you can use some GenAI and just scan through it real quick and do a summary, right? Okay, today's agenda, a little bit about the company, a brief intro. We're gonna talk about the current role of data. And we're gonna talk about the business potential of GenAI. Now, the one interesting thing, who is this presentation for? I am so interested to understand who you guys are. So who is from North America here? All right, and who's not from North America? Okay, awesome. So it's like, 40, 60%. That's great. All right, do we have any folks on the business side? All right, I love it. Awesome. Looking forward to having a dialogue. How many C-level people do we have in here? Anyone sneak in and say, I'm wake up at 9 o'clock? I didn't think so. Okay, good. So we could be very comfortable here. All right, let's get started. So, Guess. You might have heard of us. Started in 1981. Founded by 4 brothers from France. Traveled to the US. One day, they had a small, number of boutiques in France. And they thought, hey, let's take our denim. They started to do stonewash, right? They started their brand in LA. That's where we're headquartered. And the interesting thing is, do you know how we got our name? They were driving in LA somewhere. Traffic is terrible all the time. They saw this billboard. It said, guess what's in the guess it's a McDonald's billboard. Guess what's in the Big Mac or something like that, right? And they're like, oh my God, Guess. That's a great name for a company. I kid you not. If you look it up online, you'll actually see the story. So that's how we got our name. The triangle logo is not from, they made it themselves, and that represents our brand. So we've grown a lot since 1981. We're about $2.8 billion in revenue, and we have a worldwide revenue. 77% of it is generated outside of the US. So for those of you that are not from the US, you're probably familiar with us as well. Okay, now this is just the number of stores that we operate, 1,002 directly operated stores. And then we have even more stores that are operated by our franchise operators and licensees. Okay, so what do we sell? Who are we? We are a lifestyle brand, right? We don't just sell one thing, right? We're not selling just perfume. We're not selling just handbags. We're not selling denim, apparel. We're selling this concept of a lifestyle brand, right? Head to toe, you could be fully in guest clothes, right? Eyewear, jewelry, everything, right? So we're selling this concept of a lifestyle brand. And here are some of the focus product categories that we are currently heavily pushing more effort into, right? So you can see with kids, outerwear, essentials, these are some areas that we're really heavily focusing on right now. Okay, our customers. Now, Guess has been around for 41 years. I remember when I was in junior high, those jeans were really expensive, right? My parents were like, nah, you're not getting those. You could, wear those other ones that starts with an L, ends with an S. Okay, and they were over $80, $100 back then. Our customers span across 3 different generations, right? So at Guess, we refer to them as our heritage, our millennial, and Gen Z customers. And right now, we're actively growing the Gen Z. So that's a little bit about our customer base. Now, let's think about it. As a fashion brand, right? 43 years as a fashion brand is not easy. You have to keep reinventing yourself, and you have to keep transforming the business. So we're in the middle of a huge business transformation, trying to become more efficient and all of that. Today, I don't want to focus on all of those things because those are, that would take 2 hours to explain. I want to focus on the 2 parts of the business transformation that have to do with data and analytics. That data and analytics will play a key role in. So those 2 parts, it's really becoming more efficient and effective with the way we operate. The other part is customer analytics. So my role at Guess, right, I'm the VP of Retail Applications. So in Spanish, it's called de todo un poco, right? So that means I do a little bit of everything, right? The BI team, the data teams, the application teams, some of the digital teams, right? Those are all teams that manage, and we keep pushing to try to really help the business. That's our goal, right? So what are we doing? Okay, from a data standpoint, and from a data and analytics standpoint, we've actually been, over 25 years. Now, if you guys know MicroStrategy, they have one thing that we really cherish about them is that they have this entrepreneurial spirit. And I think they keep pushing. And so with Guess, Guess is actually similar in that way, right? Where we have this culture of being more entrepreneurial. So there's a lot of synergy there. And so we've used them for over 25 years, and it really empowers our better business decisions, right? That's the goal, right? Better business decisions. But being a customer for over 25 years, we have an abundance of MicroStrategy applications. And we have great usage. But think about it. Of all the things we've built, are they fully utilized, right? Are we getting the maximum value out of it? So that's something I want you to think about. We're going to come back to this concept. Now, I know it's 9:15 a.m. and it's early, and you want to see more slides with pretty people on the left, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to change it to this one, okay? So let's just talk about this one thing. I'm big into understanding the process, the overall process, the business process. Let's think about how we talk to our stakeholders when they need something, right? And on the business side, right, I know you're here, I know you're listening, you're like, okay, I want you to kind of think about how is your process in your company? I would love to know that. So I put this down, okay, typically, right, there's some sort of need. And from that need, that business need, there's some requirements and some prototyping. We sit there, maybe in a group, maybe in a brainstorming session, and we're trying to understand what analysis our end users are trying to get to, what business problems they're trying to solve, right? So that's the first part of this. And then we're telling them, so can you sketch out the report that you want? Can you put it in Excel? Can you fill out this form? There's different ways of doing this, right? But we're trying to get them to translate their thought onto this two-dimensional piece of paper, computer screen, right? Columns, or if you're really into MicroStrategy talk, like you could talk about metrics, attributes, filters, and it's a little scary, I think, for certain people, right, to just talk like that. But the point is, this requirements process, it's so ingrained in us, right? Sometimes we just, it's natural. We've been doing this forever. At least our teams have been doing this forever. Then there's some data wrangling, right? Step 2. And this is, the data engineers, they get the data, they massage it, they transform it, they put it into the databases, they do whatever they need to do. And then there's a build and test part of this application development. And sometimes it takes a long time. I think with what we saw in Fang's presentation about GenAI, maybe there's ways to really make this process much quicker. Okay, great. By the time the actual stakeholder gets to run something, you're looking at number 4, right? So there was a long time that it took from 1 to 4. And then they take their report or their dashboard or mobile app, and then they're talking to subject matter experts. Maybe it's someone on their team, maybe it's someone from a different team. Maybe they're deep diving into the data, right? Then they realize, wait a minute, it would be better if we had this. How many times has that happened to you? Can I get like this nod? Okay, it happens quite frequently, right? Because I think it's just part of human nature, right? To get people to express exactly what they need on a two-dimensional space, right? It's a little bit different. Not everyone can do it. There's a few business users and IT folks and analysts that I've met in 22 years at Guess. There's like 2. They're like perfect specs, They barely miss anything. They're like the unicorns of this world, right? There's hardly any of them. Okay, because it's just so unnatural. Now, think about it. With GenAI, are there opportunities to how do we really leverage GenAI for our business? Last year, I was in Orlando, MicroStrategy World. They started to talk about GenAI, and I was like, you know what? I don't know about this. It's kind of gimmicky, right? It looks, I know like kids are using it to like submit essays, or have it do their homework and whatnot, right? To me, it felt a little bit gimmicky. But really, today, I really want to talk about this. It's more of a dialogue, right? I'm not saying I know this. I'm saying I have a little bit, we've dabbled a little bit into it, right? So I'd like to share our experience with GenAI and start thinking about how we can really use this to derive additional business value in our business world. Not trying to submit an essay or, not trying to summarize, like let's say, hey, take my catalog of all of this information and summarize it, like some home project, right? We're not talking about that. So let's look at this. What did we do? There is a person in, let's say, my MicroStrategy sphere of influence, and that is my sales rep, who I've known forever, Jason Colosso, and the really awesome thing about him, and I'm not saying this just because Jeff, his boss, is in the room, but I'm saying this because he has a passion for what he does. And when you find a rep that is passionate about the technology and really, really understands what it can do from a business standpoint, that's powerful. So he kept saying, hey, you want to check out this GenAI? I think it's something there. And I'm like, nah, come on. I saw it at the presentation. It was more of a gimmick. Come on. And okay. But he kept bringing it up. He's like, no. I think we're going to really push hard in it. So he kept me up to date. And there was an opportunity that came up. There's this MicroStrategy ramp-up program. It's not so well known. Like there's not a lot of, you don't have the people passing out flyers about this ramp-up program, right? But this was a a program that they invited us to join. Their thought is, well, you guys love to kick the tires on whatever we have that's new and shiny. Would you like to be part of this program? I said, okay. What does this program entail? We want to work with your team. We'll get the best of the best. I don't know. I'm all into 80s movies, so if you know where that's from, good for you. Okay. The best of the best. Consultants, product folks. And product folks are really interesting because these are the people, like if you're on an airplane, these are the people that made the airplane fly, right? They know how this thing works. So it was really exciting to be invited to join this program. And we thought, okay, the goal is in 2 weeks, build a bot. Okay, in 2 weeks, build a bot. Let's see if we can do that. All right, so we started to have different sessions. We started to talk about the, requirements. But it was interesting because they asked us to start this process in a little bit of a different way. And remember that eye chart I just showed you guys, at 9:14, 9:15 a.m. And you're like, oh my God, we're going to go over that again. But we're going to go over that in this new way of thinking. So what we learned through this was transformative in how we actually think about creating a piece of analytics that's more impactful to answer these business questions. So the goal was to create this app, this bot that we could pilot to our business users. And we wanted to find a pain point. Now, remember those 2 business transformation topics that I pulled up, those 2 initiatives? Well, one of them had to do with customer analytics, really, really understanding more about your customers. So we thought, okay, let's talk to this team, our CEM team, and let's see if they're interested in engaging us in this, because this is a journey, right? This is something new. So it may not be easy, it may take some time, but if they're up for it, we think there's a decent amount of business value that we can derive from it at the end. So what did we do, right? We started to see this bot take shape. And after the span of a few weeks, we got it up and running. And it was really interesting exactly how much time we spent on it, right? But what we also learned, and that's the last point here, is that we, at Guess, we have these, I call it semantic inconsistencies. Bruce, you're killing me. It's 9 o'clock. What do you mean? Okay, basically, the term brand at Guess means different things depending on who you're talking to, and even the same person at, in the span of like 10 minutes can mean 3 different things with that same word. That word is so difficult to decipher, right? So when we're thinking about, ChatGPT and GenAI, this one word, right? What does it mean? What are they talking about? Oh, they're talking about this. No, they're not talking about that. So we literally spent 45 minutes trying to figure out the context of, and then drawing some guidelines and say, hey, if you're trying to talk about the product and the brand of the product, say product brand. If you're talking about our stores, don't call it our brand or concept of stores, call it our division, right? So and those terms are also used, but they're just not used consistently. So it's interesting, like those things come up a lot more. The other thing was, people are always worried about bot hallucination. And what we realized was that the bot, in the beginning when you're setting it up, what it comes up with may not be correct. But there's a process and a way to get the accuracy up so that hallucination is not really that big of a deal. Because think about it, when you use ChatGPT, is it always right? It has a little disclaimer on the bottom in like 2-point font, like, the answers and results may not be correct, so don't take me that seriously, right? So you're thinking, okay, this is a consumer product. How do we apply that into our business world? I mean, in the business world, we want to be accurate. The awesome thing about this is that you could actually ask it to drill down. You could ask it for more detail. You could ask it to serve up the information in a different way so you could take a look at it. So even though there's always the possibility that it pulls up the information that you not necessarily wanted, it's not necessarily its fault as well. You could have said something or written something or asked it something in a way that didn't make too much sense to it. So there's ways to tune it, but there's also ways to understand how to ask it better, right? So that whole thing about prompt engineering. So what else did we learn? Okay. We learned that the actual development time was in days. Now, the project didn't take days, but the actual elapsed time to develop only really took days. Once we really understood on both sides, from the guest side, from the MicroStrategy side, how to work with this, literally, we had these meetings. I mean, they were intense. Instead of saying, hey, we're gonna drag things out and let's meet next week, and at the end we said, guys, let's just get on a Zoom call and figure it out, however long it takes, right? And so we did these sessions with the teams, and we actually pulled through and got a lot done. And I would say that, I don't know, maybe it's because of what happened with the pandemic. Everyone got so comfortable with these Zoom meetings. Everyone got so comfortable with scheduling these meetings, but getting together, it's like we were virtually in a war room trying to figure this out. And it was actually really refreshing to see. So what we saw was, this bot is really interesting. And you guys know why. There's reasons that I can't show an actual bot that has our customer information, but I can definitely tell you more about it. So the interesting thing is, the bot has a lot of intelligence built in that's not necessarily, let's say, MicroStrategy intelligence. It's just intelligent about data. It's intelligent about understanding what the user is asking. And it's intelligent about the context of what they're asking, right? And it's also intelligent about some of the history, in the history of your chat, to understand the context by which you're gonna ask the next question. So for all of those things, right, I believe that in the future, we're gonna look at these bots not as bots. We're gonna look at them as force multipliers. They're gonna be subject matter experts that our business users can go into and ask questions and receive answers. To stop thinking about them as these widgets, to think about them as more of a virtual subject matter expert. Because I don't know about you, but there's always, these prized, cherished analysts, in different companies, and everyone just seems to want to go to them. If you have a really hard problem, you hope that person has the bandwidth to help you, right? And what we also realized here is that the development was very agile. And I hate this agile word. Everyone uses it, right? So I've been on projects where I said, hey, can you show me the project plan and just kind of overall where we're going with this? We are agile. Oh, okay, you lost me there, buddy. I really can't stand this word. And so for me to actually put it up here, it means a lot. Because agile development to me is, you're just able to get from one step of the project to the other quickly, and you get a product out. Your business users, your stakeholders are testing it, they're using it, they're embracing it. To me, it's like from A to Z, how fast were you, right? And how much friction was involved. The interesting thing here was that the bot, being able to ask the bot in plain English, was amazing. Not just for the eventual end user, but also for the development team. Also for the analysts on the guest side, right? Also for the data engineers. They're able to quickly understand if the data that they're gonna put in there actually makes sense. So you actually made them more business savvy. Can you believe that? IT people that are business savvy? But really, to me, it's groundbreaking, because now you're actually saying, hey, let the IT folks test out these business questions. Let the IT folks really take a stab and ask the questions as a business user and see what comes out, right? So they're almost piloting how to be a business user without them even knowing it. It was so easy, right? And it was actually pretty fun, right? Like you could ask it questions. You're like, hey, what is this? So it's got that bit of a fun factor to it. It's not sitting there, trying to create like 19 metrics with dimensionality and all that good MicroStrategy verbiage, right? So easy to use, and to me, it was a super efficient use of time. Now, remember that eye chart? Haha, let's go back to it. So I changed a few things, right? You can see some of it. I've highlighted in red, but the beginning portion of it, you're no longer trying to get your business users, your stakeholders, to think about their business problem and put it into a two-dimensional space. That translation just doesn't work unless you're those two unicorns that I've met before, right? So now you're just saying, hey, give me your questions. Tell me what you're trying to solve, but give me context. Because when you just try this on ChatGPT itself, right? If you just put a few sentences or if you put it in the context of something, it's much more rich when it understands the context, right? So it's really interesting, right, to really start just talking and getting answers about business questions. And the whole mode is now conversational. So to me, that is pretty amazing. Now, data wrangling is data wrangling. And I think this highlights that, let's say, that step number one is now much faster. That means that the guys and gals that are doing step number two can no longer hide back there and say, oh, we have time. No, because the data wrangling and data acquisition is gonna become more important to really, really have more resources or smarter and more efficient ways to gather this information, right? Because you've shortened down the time. Number one, that step, you've now made it super efficient and effective. Not only that, but now that you have data, right, you put it and you start building it, and that application development, there's not much to do. I mean, yes, I'm not playing down that the consultant actually had to do a lot of work, but the thing is, it's not like you're building from A to Z this huge MicroStrategy project to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, you can plug it into your project, right? And the great thing is, I think MicroStrategy is already thinking about this in the future, right? How to make things even more efficient, how to build things quicker. And we saw some of their demos in the keynote. So it gets down to number 4. You're getting your answers using English. Now, for those of you that are, not native speakers of English, it's switch the language out, right? Because these GenAI models work in different languages as well. Requires no training. I mean, you kind of have to just get used to understanding how to ask these questions or how to put your prompt in there, in a more effective way. But really, the funny thing is, we were asked by our business users if they're able to use ChatGPT to generate SQL and take that SQL and run it against the database. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be tough because ChatGPT is not going to know that much about our data, right? And so why even go there? Why even go there when you can just get the answers using English or Spanish, right? Or French or Italian, whatever language, right? So why not just do that? Because it breaks down the barriers for training. You don't need much training, right? We've been trained to ask questions all of our lives, right? So number 5, what happens then? Now, the bot is your SME. I'm not downplaying the need for SMEs, and those analysts are still awesome analysts, but what it's gonna do is gonna free up the time that those analysts have. They can work on the most difficult, most value-driven problems. So to me, this just makes the organization much more efficient. The ability for us to be much more efficient is there. And then you realize, we need to acquire more data. Yes, you need to acquire more data, but this process, because it doesn't take much time, you do this much more quickly. The data wrangling team, they're still working on the first iteration of data, and you're asking them to change something. You know what? They're usually grumpy. You know those guys, those girls. But they're less grumpy, right? When you ask them if they're still working on it, they don't mind adding stuff. But if it's been 3 weeks, if it's been 5 weeks, what happens? Well, that developer, he's on vacation, he went to the Cayman Islands, whatever, right? Like, he's not gonna be back for another week, and then we got all these other projects. This request is coming at the wrong time. I wish I could help you. Can you wait a little bit longer, right? So why not do it when it's still being worked on, right? So really interesting what we saw during this ramp up for the AI bot. Now, some of my wish list items, and I know some product people may have accidentally stepped into this presentation, so I don't know. I hope you guys don't mind, right? But basically, some of this I've expressed to them. Some of it, it's iterative, right? So I'm also changing, the requirements of what we would like, right? So I feel like, it's still warm, right? They're still changing things, right? They could get in there and add some more. But it would be great if the bot could remember more of its history. It seems to only remember, from the last question or so, right? So that part of that, I think, them having more customers use it and provide feedback allows them to understand how critical some of these features are or how impactful they could be. The other part is to use the AI bots to guide part of that process from that eye chart. Why couldn't we use the bot to do more, right? Guide the definition gathering. Let's say you're at a new company. You have 5 stores. You want to start a customer experience management department. You don't know anything about it. You ever tried asking ChatGPT what you should look at? If you're trying to, it gives you a lot of information. You should be looking at customer churn. You should be looking at these key KPIs, blah, 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 right? This is how you can analyze how your customers are doing. So ChatGPT is helping you have this process, a pre-built process. It may not be the best because you have, other people that have been doing this for many more years, right? But it gets you started quickly so you can move on, so you can iterate, right? So it would be great if this was also kind of built into the process. And leveraging that, thinking about that from a business standpoint, is to make the bots smart enough to be your SMEs, right? You can ask them more business questions, not just, I want to see my sales of my top 20% customers year over year. It's like, no, don't ask that. What is, causing my sales of my top 20% customers to be impacted? What can we do differently? What are some opportunities? What's driving the sales or what's not driving the sales, right? So there's a lot more things that you can ask if you stop thinking about it from a data standpoint and think about it more from a business standpoint, right? So this is really, to me, kind of mind-blowing. The other things that we would like is just, saving the results, like being able to save certain results and say, hey, I just did this awesome analysis. I asked it like 6, 7 different questions that got to this point where this cohort of customers, I want to save because I want to use them again in some other analysis. Well, it's not there yet, right? So that's one of the wish list items that we would like. The other part is really in the future, we would love to just do data science, right? Clustering, without having to go to the not so grumpy data science, data engineering team to get this done, right? Can we do it inside the bot? I mean, at least push to get there, right? Because I think if you can bring the traditional AI into this Gen AI world, then I think you can really, really do a lot more with this hybrid approach. So why do I think this is so game-changing? Well, we kind of went over a few of these, but let me just emphasize these points. This natural user interface and the query language, it's common language. It's the way we interact. It's the way humans interact. So Jeff mentioned in the beginning when he did the intro that we have really embraced new technologies from MicroStrategy. You know, when the mobile wave was coming out, we thought, wow, that's amazing. We were in a conference in Cannes, and my CIO at the time, he was like, you're gonna have to buy some iPads. We're gonna have to get some apps out. Like, wow, it's like 8:30 in the morning, and he's on fire. He's like, this is gonna be a game changer. And sure enough, we worked with MicroStrategy. They had never had a company do that. The difference was we thought of the app as an app. We didn't think of the app as a BI tool. So we actually pushed the boundaries of what MicroStrategy could do at the time to make it an app, a full app with all the workflows and everything like that. And they accommodated us when we pushed them. They were very open to feedback. So we felt that it just made sense. It's you're intercepting your business community in their natural environment. When they're walking around, right, mobile just makes sense. Now, when you're able to use natural language to do the same thing, it's something that no one really needs to be taught, right? Now you're able to use this in a business context. Interesting. Maybe it's not so gimmicky, right? When I was in Orlando last year, I'm not sure. So the other part is we always look for this. Is it engaging and fun? Because if it's engaging and fun and it has good business value, it's gonna drive this pervasive use. And pervasive use, you know, Fong mentioned it, right? A lot of us, we build all these things, our teams build all these things, and we want people to use it, right? So if they don't use it, you know, all these assets, they just sit there collecting dust. Now, the other thing that's important is just to make sure that, you know, MicroStrategy has our back when it comes to security. And so that's one thing that, okay, we're not just going out there on our own, you know, doing our own little overgrown science experiment projects, and we're actually leveraging a company that's heavily investing in this technology. So it's just safety in numbers, right? You're there with a trusted partner that you've gone through these iterations with them. You're seeing what they're doing in this new space with this new technology, and you're seeing them trying to push the boundaries, right? So it's a great partnership and great collaboration. Now, why is this such a game changer for me? Because I feel like that pervasive use, there should be like a parentheses around it. It was, in the past, pervasive use was really pervasive use for who? Pervasive use for those that wanted to use an app, that wanted to open a report, that wanted to log into MicroStrategy, that wanted to, you know, access a PDF that was generated. Pervasive use, we tried to provide them all this information in these different environments. But at the end, not everyone was part of it. There's just still some barriers to providing that kind of information in that mode, in that environment, where I believe that using these GenAI, these chatbots, right, leveraging them as SMEs eventually is really gonna help people trust the data, and you're gonna allow anyone that you give access to, right, you're gonna allow them to access that information and get the answer. And to me, that's pretty powerful because it allows us to be on the same page with the data. It allows us to have the same answers to the business questions. Because if you think about it, when you run a report or when 5 people run the same report, they're not always gonna come up with the same 5 conclusions, especially if they have to drill down to different levels of detail, especially if they have to, you know, modify that report because that information wasn't there. By the time they get down to their analysis, they could have 2 different versions of the truth. It could be a little bit different, right? So to me, this is interesting because you're allowing people to do this deep analysis with just natural language. And to me, that's pretty amazing. You still want your specialists, but you can still do it without them, which is great because then you can use them for the most important projects and the most important business questions. Now, The last part is free your mind. I mean, it sounds like a movie that I've once watched, right? So free your data, free your mind. This last slide, why did I put this up here? Think about it. It's causing us to rethink how we do things. It's causing us to rethink what data analytics can be for our business users. It's causing us to rethink that maybe we should talk more about the business problems and the business questions and less about the data, right? It's causing us to rethink an entire process of how we've done things. To me, this is also mind-blowing, right? And this is really important for us. I put these three items here. Okay, so at the end, right, we just want to achieve these business goals faster. That's the goal of every organization, right? Become more efficient. Get someone to that answer right away, right? Especially if they're challenging. And then the last part is, let's say you just sit there and say, nah, it's not for me. I don't know, Bruce. I've had this conversation the last couple of days with some folks that I've known for a long time. And that's great. That's fine. But then that means someone else is doing it, right? What if then that opportunity that you could have had, what if that goes by because someone else now has that expertise in that area? Are you willing to let that happen to you and your organization? So that's a question, right? So I want to thank you all.